everybody. Oh, just said OBS had disconnected. Oh wait, it says it's reconnected. Oh boy, I hope that didn't mess with the stream. Sorry, I'm just double checking everything in OBS right now, making sure everything is still working well. Da da da. Missed you too. Okay. So, looks like everything is fine. So we're gonna go ahead and read chapter 3 of The Last Unicorn. Schmendrick came back a little before dawn, slipping between the cages as silently as water. Only the harpy made a sound as he went by. I couldn't get any sooner, he told the unicorn. She set Rook to watching me, and he hardly ever sleeps. But I asked him a riddle, and it always takes him all night to solve riddles. Next time I'll tell him a joke and keep him busy for a week. The unicorn was gray and still. There's magic on me, she said. Why did you not tell me? I thought you knew, the magician answered gently. After all, didn't you wonder how it could be that they recognized you? Then he smiled, which made him look a little older. No, of course not. You never would wonder about that. There's never been a spell on me before, the unicorn said. She shivered long and deep. There's never been a world in which I was not known. I know exactly how you feel, Schmendrick said eagerly. The unicorn looked at him out of dark, endless eyes, and he smiled nervously and looked at his hands. It's a rare man who is taken for what he truly is, he said. There's much misjudgment in the world. Now I knew you for a unicorn when I first saw you, and I know that I am your friend. Yet you take me for a clown, or a clod, or a betrayer, and so I must be, if you see me so. The magic on you is only magic, and will vanish as soon as you are free. But the enchantment of error that you put on me I must wear forever in your eyes. We are not always what we seem, and hardly ever what we dream. Still, I have read, or heard it sung, that unicorns, when time was young, could tell the difference twixt the two. The false shining and the true, the lips laugh and the hearts rue. His quiet voice lifted as the sky grew lighter, and for a moment the unicorn could not hear the bars whining, or the soft ringing of the harpy's wings. I think you are my friend, she said. Will you help me? If not you, no one, the magician answered. You are my last chance. One by one, the sad beasts of the midnight carnival came whimpering, sneezing, and shuddering awake. One had been dreaming of rocks and bugs and tender leaves, another of bounding through high, hot grass, a third of mud and blood. And one had dreamed of a hand scratching the lonely place behind its ears. Only the harpy had not slept, and now she sat staring into the sun without blinking. Schmendrick said, If she frees herself first, we are lost. They heard Rook's voice nearby. that voice that always sounded nearby calling, Schmendrick! Hey Schmendrick, I got it! It's a coffee pot, right? The magician began to move slowly away. Tonight, he murmured to the unicorn. Trust me until dawn. And was gone with a flap and a scramble, seeming as before to leave part of himself behind. Rook loped by the cage a moment later, all deadly economy. Hidden in her black wagon, Mommy Fortuna grumbled Ellie's song to herself. Here is here, there, and high is low, all may be undone. What is true, no two men know. What is gone is gone. Soon a new catch of spectators began to come sauntering up to see the show. Rook called them in, crying, Creatures of night, like an iron parrot, and Schmendrick stood on a box and did tricks. The unicorn watched him with great interest and a growing uncertainty, not of his heart, but of his craft. He made an entire sow out of a sow's ear, turned a sermon into a stone, a glass of water into a handful of water, a 5 of spades into a 12 of spades, and a rabbit into a goldfish that drowned. Each time he conjured up confusion, he glanced quickly at the unicorn with eyes that said, Oh, but you know what I really did. Once he changed a dead rose into a seed. The unicorn liked that, even though it did turn out to be a radish seed. The show began again. Once more, Rook led the crowd from one of Mommy Fortuna's poor fables to another. The dragon blazed, Cerberus howled for hell to come and help him, and the satyr tempted women until they wept. They squinted and pointed at the manticore's yellow tusks and swollen sting, grew still at the thought of the Midgard serpent, and wondered at Arachne's new web, which was like a fisherman's net with the dripping moon in it. Each of them took it for a real web, but only the spider believed that it held the real moon. This time Rook did not tell the story of King Phineas and the Argonauts. Indeed, he hurried his sightseers past the harpy's cage as quickly as he could, gabbling only her name and the meaning of it. The harpy smiled. Nobody saw her smile except the unicorn, and she wished that she had chanced to be looking somewhere else at the time. When they stood in front of her cage, gazing silently in at her, the unicorn thought bitterly, Their eyes are so sad. How much sadder would they be, I wonder, if the spell that disguises me dissolved and they were left staring at a common white mare? The witch is right. Not one would know me. But then a soft voice, rather like the voice of Schmendrick the magician, said inside her, But their eyes are so sad. And when Rook shrieked, Behold, the very end! And the black hanging slithered back to reveal Ellie, mumbling in the cold and the darkness, the unicorn felt the same helpless fear of growing old that set the crowd to flight, even though she knew that it was only Mommy Fortuna in the cage. She thought, The witch knows more than she knows. Night came quickly, perhaps because the harpy hurried it on. The sun sank into dirty clouds like a stone into the sea, and without as much chance of rising again, then there was no moon or any stars. Mommy Fortuna made her gliding rounds of the cages. The harpy did not move when she drew near, and that made the old woman stand and stare at her for a long time. Not yet, she muttered. Not yet. But her voice was weary and doubtful. She peered briefly at the unicorn, her eyes a stir of yellow in the greasy gloom. Well, one day more, she said in a cackling sigh, and turned away again. There was no sound in the carnival after she was gone. All the beasts were asleep, save the spider who wove and the harpy who waited. Yet the night creaked tighter and tighter until the unicorn expected it to split wide open, ripping a seam down the sky to reveal more bars, she thought. Where is the magician? At last he came hurrying through the silence, spinning and dancing like a cat in the cold, stumbling over shadows. When he reached the unicorn's cage, he made a joyful bow to her and said proudly, Schmendrick is with you. In the cage nearest to hers, the unicorn heard the edged shivering of bronze. I think we have very little time, she said. Can you truly set me free? The tall man smiled, and even his pale, solemn fingers grew merry. I told you that the witch has made 3 great mistakes. Your capture was the last, and the taking of the harpy the second, because you are both real, and Mommy Fortuna can no more make you hers than she can make the winter a day longer. But to take me for a mountebank like herself, that was her first and fatal folly, for I too am real. I am Schmendrick the magician, the last of the red-hot swabbies, and I am older than I look. Where is the other? The unicorn asked. Schmendrick was pushing back his sleeves. Don't worry about Rook. I asked him another riddle, one that has no answer. He may never move again. He spoke 3 angled words and snapped his fingers. The cage disappeared. The unicorn found herself standing in a grove of trees, orange and lemon, pear and pomegranate, almond and acacia, with soft spring earth under her feet and the sky growing over her. Her heart turned light as smoke, and she gathered up the strength of her body for a great bound into the sweet night. But she let the leap drift out of her untaken, for she knew, although she could not see them, that the bars were still there. She was too old not to know. I'm sorry, Schmendrick said, somewhere in the dark. I would have liked it to be that spell that freed you. Now he sang something cold and low, and the strange trees blew away like dandelion down. This is a surer spell, he said. The bars are now as brittle as old cheese, which I crumble and scatter so. Then he gasped and snatched his hands away. Each long finger was dripping blood. I must have gotten the accent wrong, he said hoarsely. He hid his hands in his cloak and tried to make his voice light. It comes and goes. A scratching of flinty phrases this time, and Schmendrick's bloody hands flickering across the sky. Something gray and grinning, something like a bear but bigger than a bear. Something that chuckled muddily came limping from somewhere, eager to crack the cage like a nut and pick out bits of the unicorn's flesh with its claws. Schmendrick ordered it back into the night, but it wouldn't go. The unicorn backed into a corner and lowered her head, but the harpy stirred softly in her cage, ringing, and the gray shape turned what must have been its head and saw her. It made a foggy, globbering sound of terror and was gone. The magician cursed and shivered. I called him up one other time, long ago. I couldn't handle him then either. Now we owe our lives to the harpy, and she may yet come to call for them before the sun rises. He stood silent, twisting his wounded fingers, waiting for the unicorn to speak. I'll try once more, he said finally. Shall I try once more? The unicorn thought that she could still see the night boiling where the gray thing had been. Yes, she said. Schmendrick took a deep breath, spat 3 times, and spoke words that sounded like bells ringing under the sea. He scattered a handful of powder over the spittle, and smiled triumphantly as it puffed up in a single silent flash of green. When the light had faded, he said 3 more words. They were like the noise bees might make buzzing on the moon. The cage began to grow smaller. The unicorn could not see the bars moving, but each time Schmendrick said, No! She had less room in which to stand. Already she could not turn around. The bars were drawing in, pitiless as the tide or the morning, and they would shear through her until they surrounded her heart, which they would keep a prisoner forever. She had not cried out when the creature Schmendrick had summoned came, grinning, toward her, but now she made a sound. It was small and despairing, but not yet yielding. Schmendrick stopped the bars, though she never knew how. If he spoke any magic, she had not heard it, but the cage stopped shrinking a breath before the bars touched her body. She could feel them all the same, each one like a little cold wind, meowing with hunger, but they could not reach her. The magician's arms fell to his sides. I dare no more, he said heavily. The next time, I might not be able. His voice trailed miserably away, and his eyes were as defeated as his hands. The witch made no mistake in me, he said. Try again, the unicorn said.
You are my friend. Try again." But Schmendrick, smiling bitterly, was fumbling through his pockets in search of something that clinked and clicked.
I knew it would come to this, he muttered. I dreamed it differently, but I knew.
He brought out a ring from which dangled several rusty keys.
You deserve the services of a great wizard, he said to the unicorn. But I'm afraid you'll have to be glad of the aid of a second-rate pickpocket. Unicorns know not of need or shame, or doubt or debt, but mortals, as you may have noticed, take what they can get, and Rook can only concentrate on one thing at a time.
The unicorn was suddenly aware that every animal in the Midnight Carnival was awake, making no sound but watching her. In the next cage, the harpy began to stamp slowly from one foot to the other. "Hurry!" the unicorn said. "Hurry!" Schmendrick was already fitting a key into the snickering lock. At his first attempt, which failed, the lock fell silent. But when he tried another key, it cried out loudly. "Oh, some magician! Some magician!" It had Mommy Fortuna's voice.
I turned blue.
The magician mumbled, but the unicorn could feel him blushing. He twisted the key, and the lock snapped open with one last grunt of contempt. Schmendrick swung the cage door wide and said softly,
Step down, lady. You are free.
The unicorn stepped lightly to the ground, and Schmendrick the magician drew back in sudden wonder.
Oh,
He whispered.
it was different when there were bars between us. You looked smaller, and not as... Oh, oh my.
She was home in her forest, which was black and wet and ruined because she had been gone so long. Someone was calling to her from a long way off, but she was home, warming the trees and waking the grass. Then she heard Rook's voice like a boat bottom gritting on pebbles.
Okay, Schmendrick, I give up. Why is a raven like a writing desk?
The unicorn moved away into deepest shadow, and Rook saw only the magician and the empty dwindled cage. His hand jumped to his pocket and came away again.
Why, you thin thief, he said, grinning iron. She'll string you on barbed wire to make a necklace for the harpy.
He turned then and headed straight for Mommy Fortuna's wagon.
Run,
The magician said. He made a frantic, foolish, flying leap and landed on Rook's back, hugging the dark man dumb and blind with his long arms. They fell together, and Schmendrick scrambled up first, his knees nailing Rook's shoulders to the earth.
Barbed wire, he gasped. You pile of stones, you waste, you desolation. I'll stuff you with misery till it comes out your eyes.
I'll change your heart into green grass and all you love into a sheep. I'll turn you into a bad poet with dreams. I'll set all your toenails growing inwards, you mess with me. Rook shook his head and sat up, hurling Schmendrick 10 feet away.
What are you talking about? He chuckled. You can't turn cream into butter.
The magician was getting to his feet, but Rook pushed him back down and sat on him.
I never did like you, he said pleasantly. You give yourself airs, and you're not very strong.
Heavy as night, his hands closed on the magician's throat. The unicorn did not see. She was out at the farthest cage, where the manticore growled and whimpered and lay flat. She touched the point of her horn to the lock and was gone to the dragon's cage without looking back. One after another she set them all free, the satyr, the Cerberus, the Midgard serpent. Their enchantments vanished as they felt their freedom, and they leaped and lumbered and slithered away into the night, once more a lion, an ape, a snake, a crocodile, a joyous dog. None of them thanked the unicorn, and she did not watch them go. Only the spider paid no mind when the unicorn called softly to her through the open door. Arachne was busy with a web which looked to her as though the Milky Way had begun to fall like snow. The unicorn whispered, "Weaver, freedom is better! Freedom is better!" But the spider fled, unhearing, up and down her iron loom. She never stopped for a moment, even when the unicorn cried, "It's really very attractive, Arachne, but it's not art." The new web drifted down the bars like snow. Then the wind began. The spider web blew across the unicorn's eyes and disappeared. The harpy had begun to beat her wings, calling her power in, as a crouching wave draws sand and water roaring down the beach. A bloodshot moon burst out of the clouds, and the unicorn saw her, swollen gold, her streaming hair kindling,
the cold, slow wings shaking the cage. The harpy was laughing. In the shadow of the unicorn's cage, Rook and Schmendrick were on their knees. The magician was clutching the heavy ring of keys, and Rook was rubbing his head and blinking. Their faces were blind with terror as they stared at the rising harpy, and they leaned together in the wind. It blew them against one another, and their bones rang. The unicorn began to walk toward the harpy's cage. Schmendrick the magician, tiny and pale, kept opening and closing his mouth at her, and she knew not what he was shrieking, though then she knew what he was shrieking, though she could not hear him. She will kill you! She will kill you! Run, you fool! Run while she's still a prisoner! She'll kill you if you set her free! But the unicorn walked on, following the light of her horn, until she stood before Silano, the Dark One. For an instant the icy wings hung silent in the air like clouds, and the harpy's old yellow eyes sank into the unicorn's heart and drew her close. "I'll kill you if you set me free," the eyes said. "Set me free." The unicorn lowered her head until her horn touched the lock of the harpy's cage. The door did not swing open, and the iron bars did not thaw into starlight. But the harpy lifted her wings, and the four sides of the cage fell slowly away and down, like the petals of some great flower waking at night. And out of the wreckage the harpy bloomed, terrible and free, screaming, her hair swinging like a sword. The moon withered and fled. The unicorn heard herself cry out, not in terror but in wonder. "Oh, you're like me!" She reared joyously to meet the harpy's stoop, and her horn leaped up into the wicked wind. The harpy struck once, missed, and swung away, her wings clanging and her breath warm and stinking. She burned overhead, and the unicorn saw herself reflected on the harpy's bronze breast and felt the monster shining from her own body. So they circled one another like a double star, and under the shrunken sky there was nothing real but the two of them. The harpy laughed with delight, and her eyes turned the color of honey. The unicorn knew that she was going to strike again. The harpy folded her wings and fell like a star, not at the unicorn, but beyond her, passing so close that a single feather drew blood from the unicorn's shoulder, bright claws reaching for the heart of Mommy Fortuna, who was stretching out her own sharp hands as though to welcome the harpy home. "Not alone!" the witch howled triumphantly at both of them. "You never could have freed yourselves alone! I held you!" Then the harpy reached her, and she broke like a dead stick and fell. The harpy crouched on her body, hiding it from sight, and the bronze wings turned red. The unicorn turned away. Close by, she heard a child's voice telling her that she must run. She must run. It was the magician. His eyes were huge and empty, and his face, always too young, was collapsing into childhood as the unicorn looked at him. "No," she said. "Come with me." The harpy made a thick, happy sound that melted the magician's knees, but the unicorn said again, "Come with me!" And together they walked away from the midnight carnival. The moon was gone, but to the magician's eyes the unicorn was the moon, cold and white and very old, lighting his way to safety or to madness. He followed her, never once looking back, even when he heard the desperate scrambling and skidding of heavy feet, the boom of bronze wings, and Rook's interrupted scream. "He ran," the unicorn said. "You must never run from anything immortal. It attracts their attention." Her voice was gentle and without pity. "Never run," she said. "Walk slowly and pretend to be thinking of something else. Sing a song, say a poem, do your tricks, but walk slowly, and she may not follow. Walk very slowly, magician." So they fled across the night together, step by step, the tall man in black and the horned white beast. There's an image here, so I'm going to go ahead and share it with you guys. There you go.
The magician crept as close to the unicorn's light as he dared, for beyond it moved hungry shadows, the shadows of the sounds that the harpy made as she destroyed the little there was to destroy of the midnight carnival. But another sound followed them long after those had faded, followed them into morning on a strange road, the tiny, dry sound of a spider weeping. Chapter 4. Like a newborn child, the magician wept for a long time before he could speak.
The poor old woman.
He whispered at last. The unicorn said nothing, and Schmendrick raised his head and stared at her in a strange way. A gray morning rain was beginning to fall, and she shone through it like a dolphin. No, she said, answering his eyes. I can never regret. He was silent, crouched by the road in the rain, drawing his soaked cloak close around his body until he looked like a broken black umbrella. The unicorn waited, feeling the days of her life falling around her with the rain. I can sorrow, she offered gently, but it's not the same thing. When Schmendrick looked at her again, he had managed to pull his face together, but it was still struggling to escape from him.
Where will you go now?
He asked.
Where were you going when she took you?
I was looking for my people, the unicorn said. Have you seen them, magician? They're wild and sea-white, like me. Schmendrick shook his head gravely.
I've never seen anyone like you. Not while I was awake. There were supposed to be a few unicorns left when I was a boy. But I know only one man who had ever seen one. They're surely gone, lady. All but you. When you walk, you make an echo where they used to be.
No, she said, for others have seen them. It gladdened her to hear that there had been still some unicorns as recently as the magician's childhood. She said, a butterfly told me of the Red Bull, and the witch spoke of King Haggard. So I'm going wherever they are to learn whatever they know. Can you tell me where Haggard is hiding? The magician's face almost got away, but he caught it and began to smile very slowly, as though his mouth had turned to iron. He bent it into the proper shape in time, but it was an iron smile.
I can tell you a poem, he said, where all the hills are lean as knives, and nothing grows, not leaves nor lives, where hearts are sour as boiled beer. Haggard is the ruler here.
I will know when I get there then, she said, thinking that he was mocking her. Do you know any poems about the Red Bull?
There are none, Schmendrick answered.
He rose to his feet, pale and smiling.
About King Haggard I know only what I have heard, he said. He is an old man, stingy as late November, who rules over a barren country by the sea. Some say that the land was green and soft once, before Haggard came, but he touched it, and it withered. There's a saying among farmers, when they look on a field lost to fire or locusts or the wind, as blighted as Haggard's heart. They say also that there are no lights in his castle and no fires, and that he sends his men out to steal chickens and bedsheets and pies from windowsills. The story has it that the last time King Haggard laughed,
the unicorn stamped her foot.
Schmendrick said, as for the Red Bull, I know less than I have heard, for I have heard too many tales, and each argues with each other. The bull is real. The bull is a ghost. The bull is Haggard himself when the sun goes down. The bull was in the land before Haggard, or it came with him, or it came to him. It protects him from raids and revolutions, and saves him the expense of arming his men. It keeps him a prisoner in his own castle. It is the devil to whom Haggard has sold his soul. It is the thing he sold his soul to possess. The bull belongs to Haggard. Haggard belongs to the bull.
The unicorn felt a shiver of sureness spreading through her, widening from the center like a ripple. In her mind, the butterfly piped again.
They passed down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull ran close behind them and covered their footprints.
She saw white forms blowing away in a bellowing wind and yellow horns shaking. I will go there, she said. Magician, I owe you a boon, for you set me free. What would you have of me before I leave you? Schmendrick's long eyes were glinting like leaves in the sun.
Take me with you.
She moved away, cool and dancing, and she did not answer. The magician said,
I might be useful. I know the way into Haggard's country, and the languages of the lands between here and there.
The unicorn seemed very near to vanishing into the sticky mist, and Schmendrick hurried on.
Besides, no wanderer was ever the worse for a wizard's company, even a unicorn. Remember the tale of the great wizard Nikos. Once, in the woods, he beheld a unicorn sleeping with his head in the lap of a giggling virgin, while three hunters advanced with drawn bows to slay him for his horn. Nikos had only a moment to act. With a word and a wave, he changed the unicorn into a handsome young man, who woke, and seeing the astonished bowmen gaping there, charged upon them and killed them all. His sword was of a twisted, tapering design, and he trampled the bodies when the men were dead.
And the girl? The unicorn asked. Did he kill the girl too?
No, he married her. He said she was only an aimless child, angry at her family, and that all she really needed was a good man. Which he was, then and always, for even Nikos could never give him back his first form. He died old and respected. Of a surfeit of violets, some say. He never could get enough violets. There were no children.
The story lodged itself somewhere in the unicorn's breast. The unicorn did him no service but great ill, she said softly. How terrible it would be if all my people had been turned human by well-meaning wizards, exiled, trapped in burning houses. I would sooner find that the Red Bull had killed them all.
Where you are going now, Schmendrick answered, few will mean you anything but evil, and a friendly heart, however foolish, may be as welcome as water one day. Take me with you, for laughs, for luck, for the unknown. Take me with you.
The rain faded as he spoke. The sky began to clear, and the wet grass glowed like the inside of a seashell. The unicorn looked away, searching through a fog of kings for one king, and through a snowy glitter of castles and palaces for one built on the shoulders of a bull. No one has ever traveled with me, she said, but then no one ever caged me before or took me for a white mare, or disguised me as myself. Many things seem determined to happen to me for the first time, and your company will surely not be the strangest of them nor the last. So you may come with me if you like, though I wish you had asked me for some other reward.
Schmendrick smiled sadly. I thought about it.
He looked at his fingers, and the unicorn saw the half-moon marks where the bars had bitten him.
But you could never have granted my true wish.
There it is, the unicorn thought, feeling the first spidery touch of sorrow on the inside of her skin. That is how it will be to travel with a mortal all the time. No, she replied, I cannot turn you into something you are not, no more than the witch could. I cannot turn you into a true magician.
I didn't think so, Schmendrick said. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
I'm not worrying about it, the unicorn said. A blue jay swooped low over them on that first day of their journey, said, Well, I'll be a squab under glass, and flapped straight home to tell his wife about it. She was sitting in the nest, singing to their children in a dreary tone. Spiders and sow-bugs, beetles and crickets, slugs from the roses and ticks from the thickets, grasshoppers, snails, and a quail eggs or two, all to be regurgitated for you. Lullaby, lullaby, swindles and schemes, flying's not near as much fun as it seems. So, a unicorn day, the blue jay said as he lit. You didn't see any supper, I notice, his wife replied coldly. I hate a man who talks with his mouth empty.
Maybe a unicorn.
The jay abandoned his casual air and hopped up and down on the branch. I haven't seen one of those since the time. You've never seen one, she said. This is me, remember? I know what you've seen in your life and what you haven't.
The jay paid no attention. It was a strange-looking party in black with her, he rattled. They were going over Cat Mountain. I wonder if they were headed for Haggard's country.
He cocked his head to the artistic angle that had first warned his wife. "What a vision for old Agne's breakfast," he marveled. "A unicorn coming to call, bold as you please, rat-tat-tat on his dismal door. I'd give anything to see." "I suppose the two of you didn't spend the whole day watching unicorns?" his wife interrupted with a click of her beak. "At least, I understand that she used to be considered quite imaginative in matters of spare time." She advanced on him, her neck feathers ruffling. "Honey, I haven't even seen her," the blue jay began, and his wife knew that he hadn't, and wouldn't dare. But she batted him one anyway. She was one woman who knew what to do with a slight moral edge. The unicorn and the magician walked through the spring, over Soft-Cat Mountain and down into a violet valley where apple trees grew. Beyond the valley were low hills, as fat and docile as sheep, lowering their heads to sniff at the unicorn in wonder as she moved among them. After these came the slower heights of summer, and the baked plains where the air hung shiny as candy. Together she and Schmendrick forded rivers, scrambled up and down brambly banks and bluffs, and wandered in woods that reminded the unicorn of her home, though they could never resemble it having known time. "So is my forest now," she thought, but she told herself it did not matter, that all would be as before when she returned. At night, while Schmendrick slept the sleep of a hungry, footsore magician, the unicorn crouched awake, waiting to see the vast form of the Red Bull come charging out of the moon. At times she thought what she was sure was his smell, a dark, sly reek easing through the night, reaching out to find her. Then she would spring to her feet with a cold cry of readiness, only to find two or three deer gazing at her from a respectful distance. Deer love and envy unicorns. Once a buck in his second summer, prodded forward by his giggling friends, came quite close to her and mumbled without meeting her eyes. "You're very beautiful. You're just as beautiful as our mother said." The unicorn looked silently back at him, knowing that he expected no answer from her. The other deer snickered and whispered, "Go on, go on." Then the buck raised his head and cried out swiftly and joyously, "But I know someone more beautiful than you!" He wheeled and dashed away in the moonlight, and his friends followed him. The unicorn lay down again. Now and then in their journey they came to a village, and there Schmendrick would introduce himself as a wandering wizard, offering, as he cried in the streets, "to sting for my supper, to bother you just a little bit, to trouble your sleep ever so slightly, and pass on." Few were the towns where he was not invited to stable his beautiful white mare and stay the night, and before the children went to bed he would perform in the market square by lantern light. He never actually attempted any greater magic than making dolls talk and turning soap into sweets, but even this trifling sorcery sometimes slipped from his hands. But the children liked him, and their parents were kindly with supper, and the summer evenings were lithe and soft. Ages after, the unicorn still remembered the strange chocolate stable smell, and Schmendrick's shadow dancing on walls and doors and chimneys in the leaping light. In the mornings they went on their way, Schmendrick's pockets full of bread and cheese and oranges, and the unicorn pacing beside him, sea white in the sun, sea green in the dark of the trees. His tricks were forgotten before he was out of sight, but his white mare troubled the nights of many a villager, and there were women who woke weeping from dreams of her. One evening they stopped in a plump, comfortable town where even the beggars had double chins and the mice waddled. Schmendrick was immediately asked to dinner with the mayor and several of the rounder councilmen, and the unicorn, unrecognized as always, was turned loose in a pasture where the grass grew sweet as milk. Dinner was served out of doors, at a table in the square, for the night was warm and the mayor was pleased to show off his guest. It was an excellent dinner. During the meal, Schmendrick told stories of his life as an errant enchanter, filling it with kings and dragons and noble ladies. He was not lying, merely organizing events more sensibly, and so his tales had a taste of truth even to the canny councilmen. Not only they, but all manner of folk passing in the street leaned forward to understand the nature of the spell that opened all locks, if properly applied. And there was not a one but lost a breath at sight of the marks on the magician's fingers. "Souvenir of my encounter with a harpy," Schmendrick explained calmly.
They bite.
And were you never afraid? A young girl wondered softly. The mayor made a shooing noise at her, but Schmendrick lit a cigar and smiled at her through the smoke.
Fear and hunger have kept me young, he replied.
He looked around the circle of dozing, rumbling councilmen and winked widely at the girl. The mayor was not offended.
Oh, it's true,
He sighed, caressing his dinner with linked fingers.
we do lead a good life here. Or if we don't, I don't know anything about it. I sometimes think that a little fear, a little hunger, might be good for us. Sharpen our souls, so to speak. That's why we always welcome strangers with tales to tell and songs to sing. They broaden our outlook, set us looking inward.
He yawned and stretched himself, gurgling. One of the councilmen suddenly remarked,
My word, look at the pasture.
Heavy heads turned on nodding necks, and all saw the village's cows and sheep and horses clustered at the far end of the field, staring at the magician's white mare, who was placidly cropping the cool grass. No animals made a noise. Even the pigs and geese were as silent as ghosts. A crow called once, far away, and his cry drifted through the sunset like a single cinder.
Remarkable,
The mayor murmured.
most remarkable.
Yes, isn't she? The magician agreed. If I were to tell you some of the offers I've had for her.
The interesting thing, said the councilman who had spoken first, is that they don't seem to be afraid of her. They have an air of awe, as though they were doing her some sort of reverence.
They see what you have forgotten how to see. Schmendrick had drunk his share of red wine, and the young girl was staring at him with eyes both sweeter and shallower than the unicorn's eyes. He thumped his glass on the table and told the smiling mayor,
She is a rarer creature than you dare to dream. She is a myth, a memory, a wail of the wisp. If you remembered, if you hungered.
His voice was lost in a gust of hoofbeats and the clamor of children. A dozen horsemen, dressed in autumn rags, came galloping into the square, howling and laughing, scattering the townsfolk like marbles. They formed a line and clattered around the square, knocking over whatever came in their way and shrieking incomprehensible brags and challenges to no one in particular. One rider rose up in his saddle, bent his bow, and shot the weathercock off the church spire. Another snatched up Schmendrick's hat, jammed it on his own head, and rode on roaring. Some swung screaming children to their saddlebows, and others contented themselves with wineskins and sandwiches. Their eyes gleamed madly in their shaggy faces, and their laughter was like drums. The round mayor stood so fast until he caught the eye of the raiders' leader. Then he raised one eyebrow. The man snapped his fingers, and immediately the horses were still, and the ragged men as silent as the village animals before the unicorn. They put the children gently on the ground and gave back most of the wineskins.
Jack Jingley, if you please,
The mayor said calmly. The leader of the horsemen dismounted and walked slowly toward the table where the councilmen and their guests had dined. He was a huge man, nearly 7 feet tall, and at every step he rang and jangled because of the rings and bells and bracelets that were sewed to his patched jerkin.
Evening, Your Honor, he said in a gruff chuckle. Let's get the business over with, the mayor told him. I don't see why you can't come riding in quietly like civilized people. The boys don't mean no harm, Your Honor, the giant grumbled good-naturedly. Cooped up in the greenwood all day, they needs a little relaxing, a little catharsis like. Well to it, eh?
With a sigh, he took a wizened bag of coins from his waist and placed it in the mayor's open hand.
There you be, Your Honor,
said Jack Jingley.
It ain't much, but we can't spare no more than that.
The mayor poured the coins into his palm and pushed at them with a fat finger, grunting.
It certainly isn't much, he complained. It isn't even as much as last month's take. That was shriveled enough. You're a woeful lot of freebooters, you are. It's hard times, Jack Jingley answered suddenly. We've been to blame if travelers have no more gold than we. You can't squeeze blood out turnip, you know. I can, the mayor said. He scowled savagely and shook his fist at the giant outlaw. And if you're holding out on me, he shouted, if you're feathering your own pockets at my expense, I'll squeeze you, my friend. I'll squeeze you to pulp and peel and let the wind take you. Be off now, and tell it to your tattered captain. Away, villains! As Jack Jingley turned away, muttering, Schmendrick cleared his throat and said hesitantly, I'll have my hat, if you don't mind. The giant stared at him out of bloodshot buffalo eyes, saying nothing. My hat, Schmendrick requested in a firmer voice. One of your men took my hat, and it would be wise for him to return it. Wise, is it? Grunted Jack Jingley at last. And who be you, pray, that knows what wisdom is? The wine was still leaping in Schmendrick's own eyes. I am Schmendrick the magician, and I make a bad enemy, he declared. I am older than I look, and less amiable. My hat. Jack Jingley regarded him a few moments longer, then he walked back to his horse, stepped over it, and sat down in the saddle. He rode forward until he was hardly a beard's thickness from the waiting Schmendrick. Now then, he boomed, if you be a magician, do some tricksy. Turn my nose green, fill my saddlebags with snow, disappear my beard. Show me some magic or show me your heels. He pulled a rusty dagger from his belt and dangled it by the point, whistling maliciously. The magician is my guest, the magician warned, but Schmendrick said solemnly, Very well, on your head be it. Making sure with the edge of his eye that the young girl was watching him, he pointed at the scarecrow crew grinning behind their leader, and said something that rhymed. Instantly his black hat snatched itself from the fingers of the man who held it, and floated slowly through the darkening air, silent as an owl. 2 women fainted, and the mayor sat down. The outlaws cried out in children's voices. Down the length of the square sailed the black hat as far as a horse trough, where it dipped low and scooped itself full of water. Then, almost invisible in the shadows, it came drifting back, apparently aiming straight for the unwashed head of Jack Jingley. He covered himself with his hands, muttering, call off! And even his own men snickered in anticipation. Schmendrick smiled triumphantly, and snapped his fingers to hasten the hat. But as it neared the outlaw leader, the hat's flight began to curve, gradually at first, and then much more sharply as it bent toward the councilman's table. The mayor had just time to lunge to his feet before the hat settled itself comfortably on his head. Schmendrick ducked in time, but a couple of the closer councilmen were slightly splattered. In a roar of laughter, varyingly voluntary, that went up, Jack Jingley leaned from his horse and swept up Schmendrick the magician, who was trying to dry the spluttering mayor with the tablecloth. I misdoubt you'll be asked for encores, the giant bellowed in his ear. You'd best come with us. He threw Schmendrick face down across the saddlebow and galloped away, followed by his shabby cohorts. Their snorts and belches and guffaws lingered in the square long after the sound of hooves had died away. Men came running to ask the mayor if they should pursue to rescue the magician. But he shook his wet head, saying, I hardly think it will be necessary. If our guest is the man he claims to be, he should be able to take care of himself quite well. And if he isn't, why then an impostor taking advantage of our hospitality has no claim on us for assistance. No, never mind about him. Creeks were running down his jowls to join the brooks of his neck and the river of his shirt front, but he turned his placid gaze toward the pasture where the magician's white mare glimmered in the darkness. She was trotting back and forth before the fence, making no sound. The mayor said softly, I think it might be well to take good care of our departed friend's mount, since he evidently prized her so highly. He sent 2 men to the pasture with instructions to rope the mare and put her in the strongest stall of his own stable.
But the men had not yet reached the pasture gate when the white mare jumped the fence and was gone into the night like a falling star. The two men stood where they were for a time, not heeding the mayor's commands to come back, and neither ever said, even to the other, why he stared after the magician's mare so long. But now and then after that, they laughed with wonder in the middle of very serious events, and so came to be considered frivolous sorts. Chapter 5. All that Schmendrick remembered later of his wild ride with the outlaws was the wind, the saddle's edge, and the laughter of the jingling giant. He was too busy brooding over the ending of his hat trick to notice much else. Too much English, he suggested to himself. Overcompensation. But he shook his head, which was difficult in his position. The magic knows what it wants to do, he thought, bouncing as the horse dashed across the creek. But I never know what it knows. Not at the right time, anyway. I'd write it a letter if I knew where it lived. Brush and branches raked his face, and owls hooted in his ears. The horses had slowed to a trot, then to a walk. A high, trembling voice called out, "Out and give the password!"
Damn, here we go,
Jack Jingly muttered. He scratched his head with a sound like sawing, raised his voice, and answered,
"A short life and a merry one, here in the sweet greenwood. Jolly comrades united, to victory plighted."
"Liberty!" the thin voice corrected. "To liberty plighted! The I sound makes all the difference."
Thank ye. To liberty plighted, comrades united. No, I said that. A short life and a merry one, jolly comrades. No, that's not it.
Jack Jingly scratched his head again and groaned,
To liberty plighted. Give me a little help here.
"All for one and one for all," the voice said obligingly. "Can you get the rest yourself?"
All for one and one for all. I haven't, the giant shouted. All for one and one for all. United we stand, divided we fall.
He kicked his horse and started on again. An arrow squealed out of the dark, sliced a wedge from his ear, nicked the horse of the man riding behind him, and skittered away like a bat. The outlaws scattered to the safety of the trees, and Jack Jingly yelled with rage,
Damn your eyes, I gave the password 10 times over. Let me only get my hands on it.
"We changed the password while you were gone, Jack," came the voice of the sentry. "It was too hard to remember."
I can change the password, is it?
Jack Jingly dabbed at his bleeding ear with a fold of Schmendrick's cloak.
How was I to know that, you brainless, tripeless, liverless git?
"Don't get mad, Jack," the sentry answered soothingly. "You see, it doesn't really matter if you don't know the new password because it's so simple. You just call like a giraffe. The captain thought of it himself."
Call like a giraffe.
The giant swore till even the horses fidgeted with embarrassment.
You nay. A giraffe makes no sound at all. Captain might as well have us call like a fish or a butterfly.
"I know. That way nobody can forget the password, even you. Isn't the captain clever?"
There's no limit to the man,
Jack Jingly said wonderingly. One moment, I'm going to pause and get some water, since I am reaching into a third chapter for tonight. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back.
Let's see. I see here. What's to keep our ranger or one of the kingsmen from calling like a giraffe when you hail him?
Uh-huh, the sentry chuckled. That's where the cleverness of it is. You have to give the call 3 times. 2 long and 1 short. Jack Jingley sat silent on his horse, rubbing his ear.
Too long, one short.
He sighed presently.
Ah well, there's no more foolish than the time he had to pass with an all shot any who answered the challenge. Too long and one short, alright.
He rode on through the trees, and his men trailed after him. There is an image here, so I'm going to go ahead and share it. Go. Voices murmured somewhere ahead, sullen as robbed bees. As they drew nearer, Schmendrick thought he could make out a woman's tone among them. Then his cheek felt firelight, and he looked up. They had halted in a small clearing where another 10 or 12 men sat around a campfire, fretting and grumbling. The air smelled of burned beans. A freckled, red-haired man, dressed in somewhat richer rags than the rest, strode forward to greet them.
Well, Jack, he cried, who's this you to bring us, comrade or captive?
Over his shoulder he called to someone,
Add some more water to the soup, love. There's company. I don't know what he is myself.
Jack Jingley rumpled. He began to tell the story of the mayor and the hat. But he had hardly reached the roaring descent upon the town when he was interrupted by a thin thorn of a woman who came pushing through the ring of men to shrill, "I'll not have it, Cully. The soup's no thicker than sweat as it is." She had a pale, bony face with fierce, tawny eyes, and hair the color of dead grass. "And who's this long lout?" she asked, inspecting Schmendrick as though he were something else that she had found sticking to the sole of her shoe. "He's no townsman. I don't like the look of him. Slit his wizard." She had meant to say either weazen or gizzard, and had said both, but the coincidence trailed down Schmendrick's spine like wet seaweed. He slid off Jack Jingley's horse and stood before the outlaw captain. "I am Schmendrick the magician," he announced, swirling his cloak with both hands until it billowed feebly. "And are you truly the famous Captain Cully of the Greenwood, boldest of the bold and freest of the free?" A few of the outlaws snickered, and the woman groaned. "I knew it," she declared. "Gut him, Cully, from gills to gills before he does you the way the last one did." But the captain bowed proudly, showing an eddy of boldness on his crown, and answered, "That am I. He who hunts me for my head shall find a fearful foe, but he who seeks me as a friend may find me friend enow. How do you come here, sir?"
On my stomach, said Smendrick, and unintentionally, but in friendship nonetheless, though your layman doubts it. He added, nodding at the thin woman. She spat on the ground. Captain Cully grinned and laid his arm warily along the woman's sharp shoulders. "Ah, that's only Molly Grew's way," he explained. "She guards me better than I do myself. I am generous and easy to the point of extravagance, perhaps. An open hand to all fugitives from tyranny. That's my motto. It is only natural that Molly should become suspicious, pinched, dour, prematurely old, even a touch tyrannical. The bright balloon needs the knot at one end, eh, Molly? But she's a good heart, a good heart." The woman shrugged herself away from him, but the captain did not turn his head. "You are welcome here, Sir Sorcerer," he told Schmendrick. "Come to the fire and tell us your tale. How do they speak of me in your country? What have you heard of dashing Captain Cully and his band of freemen? Have a taco. Schmendrick accepted the place by the fire, graciously declined the gallant morsel, and replied, I have heard that you are the friend of the helpless and the enemy of the mighty, and that you and your merry men lead a joyous life in the forest, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. I know the tale of how you and Jack Jingley cracked one another's crowns with quarterstaves and became blood brothers thereby, and how you saved your Molly from marriage to the rich old man her father had chosen for her. In fact, Schmendrick had never heard of Captain Cully before that very evening, but he had a good grounding in Anglo-Saxon folklore and knew the type. And of course, he hazarded, there was a certain wicked king. Haggard, rot and ruin him! Cully cried. Aye, there's not one here who's been done wrong, but there's not one here but's been done wrong by old King Haggard, driven from his rightful land, robbed of his rank and rents, skinned out of his patrimony. They live only for revenge. Mark you, magician, and one day Haggard will pay such a reckoning. A score of shaggy shadows hissed assent, but Molly Grew's laughter fell like hail, rattling and stinging. Mayhap he will, she mocked, but it won't be to such chattering cravens he'll pay it. His castle rots and totters more each day, and his men are too old to stand up in armor. But he'll rule forever for all Captain Cully dares. Schmendrick raised an eyebrow, and Cully flushed radish red. You must understand, he mumbled. King Haggard has this bull. Ah, the Red Bull, the Red Bull, Molly hooted. I tell you what, Cully, after all these years in the wood with you, I've come to think the bull's not but the pet name you give your cowardice. If I hear that fable once more, I'll go and down old Haggard myself and know you for a... Enough! Cully roared. Not before strangers! He tugged at his sword, and Molly opened her arms to it, still laughing. Around the fire, greasy hands twiddled dagger hilts, and long bows seemed to string themselves. But Schmendrick spoke up then, seeking to salvage Cully's sinking vanity. He hated family scenes. They sing a ballad of you in my country, he began. I forget just how it goes. Captain Cully spun like a cat ambushing its own tail. Which one? He demanded. I don't know, Schmendrick answered, taken aback. Are there more than one? Aye, indeed, Cully cried, glowing and growing as though pregnant with pride. Willie Gentle, Willie Gentle, where is the lad? A lank-haired youth with a lute and pimples shambled up. Sing one of my exploits for the gentleman, Captain Cully ordered him. Sing the one about how you joined my band. I've not heard it since Tuesday last. The minstrel sighed, struck a chord, and began to sing in a wobbly countertenor. One sec, let me look something up. As Captain Cully came riding home from slaying of the King's gay deer, when whom should he spy but a pale young man came drooping o'er the lake? What news, my pretty young man, what ails thee, that ye sigh so deep? Is it for the loss of your lady fair, or are ye but scabbard in your grief? I am a scabbard, whatever that means, and my grief is as well as a grief may be. But I do sigh for my lady fair, whom my three brothers have driven from me. I am Captain Cully of the sweet greenwood, and the men of my call are fierce and free. If I do rescue your lady fair, what service will you render me? If you do rescue my lady fair, I will break your nose, you silly old gawk.
where she wore an emerald at her throat, which my three brothers also took. The captain has gone to the three bold thieves, and he's made his sword mates to shiver and sing. You may keep the last, but I'll have the stain, for it's fit for the crown of a royal king. Now comes the best part, Cully whispered to Schmendrick. He was bouncing eagerly on his toes, hugging himself. Then it's three cloaks off, and it's three swords out, and it's three swords whistling like the tea. By the faith of my body, says Captain Cully, now you shall have neither the stain nor she. And he's driven them up, and he's driven them down, and he's driven them to and fro like sheep. Like sheep, Cully breathed. He rocked and hummed and parried three swords with his forearm for the remaining 17 stanzas of the song, rapturously oblivious to Molly's mockery and the restlessness of his men. The ballad ended at last, and Schmendrick applauded loudly and earnestly, complimenting Willie Gentle on his right hand technique. I call it the Alanadale picking, the minstrel answered. He would have expounded further, but Cully interrupted him, saying, Good, Willie, good boy, now play the others. He beamed at what Schmendrick hoped was an expression of pleased surprise. I said that there were several songs about me. There are 31 to be exact, though none are in the child collection just at present. His eyes widened suddenly, and he grasped the magician's shoulders. You wouldn't be Mr. Child himself now, would you? He demanded. He often goes seeking ballads, so I've heard, disguised as a plain man. Schmendrick shook his head. No, I'm really sorry. Very. The captain sighed and released him. It doesn't matter, he murmured. One always hopes, of course, even now, to be collected, to be verified, annotated, to have variant versions, even to have one's authenticity doubted. Well, never mind. Sing the other songs, Willie lad. You'll need to practice one day when your field recorded. The outlaws grumbled and scuffed, kicking at stones. A hoarse voice bowed from a safe shadow. Oh, Willie, sing us a true song. Sing us one about Robin Hood. Who said that? Cully's loosened sword clacked in its sheath as he turned from side to side. I did, said Molly Grew, who hadn't. The men are bored with ballads of your bravery, Captain Darling, even if you did write them all yourself. Cully winced and stole a glance at Smendrick. They can still be folk songs, can't they, Mr. Child? He asked in a low, worried voice. After all, I'm not Mr. Child. Smendrick said. Really, I'm not. I mean, you can't leave epic events to the people. They get everything wrong. An aging robe and tattered velvet now slunk forward. Captain, if we're to have folk songs, and I suppose we must, then we feel they ought to be true songs about real outlaws. Not this lying life we live. No offense, Captain, but we're really not very merry when all's said. I'm merry 24 hours a day, Dick Fancy, Cully said coldly. That is a fact. And we don't steal from the rich and give to the poor. Dick Fancy hurried on. We steal from the poor because they can't fight back. Most of them. And the rich take from us because they could wipe us out in a day. We don't rob the fat, greedy mayor on the highway. We pay him tribute every month to leave us alone. We never carry off proud bishops and keep them prisoner in the wood, feasting and entertaining them, because Molly hasn't any good dishes. And besides, we just wouldn't be very stimulating company for a bishop. When we go to the fair in disguise, we never win at the archery or single stick. We do get some nice compliments on our disguises, but no more than that. I sent a tapestry into the judging once, Molly remembered. It came in fourth, fifth, a night at vigil. Everyone was doing vigils that year. Suddenly she was scrubbing her eyes with horny knuckles. Damn you, Cully. What? He yelled in exasperation. Is it my fault you didn't keep up with your weaving? Once you had your man, you let all your accomplishments go. You don't sew or sing anymore. You haven't illuminated a manuscript in years. And what happened to that viola da gamba I got you? He turned to Schmendrick. We might as well be married the way she's gone to seed. The magician nodded fractionally and looked away. And as for righting wrongs and fighting for civil liberties, that sort of thing, Dick Fancy said, it wouldn't be so bad.
I mean, I'm not the crusader type myself. Some are and some aren't. But then we have to sing those songs about wearing Lincoln green and aiding the oppressed. We don't, Cully. We turn them in for the reward. And those songs are just embarrassing. That's all. That's the truth of it.
Captain Cully folded his arms, ignoring the outlaw's snarls of agreement. Sing the songs, Willie. I'm not. The minstrel would not raise a hand to touch his lute. And you never fought my brothers for any stone, Cully. You wrote them a letter, which you didn't sign. Cully drew back his arm, and blades blinked among the men as though someone had blown on a heap of coals. At this point, Schmendrick stepped forward again, smiling urgently. If I may offer an alternative, he suggested, why not let your guest earn his night's lodging by amusing you? I can neither sing nor play, but I have my own accomplishments, and you may not have seen their like. Jack Jingley agreed immediately, saying,
I call it a magician. 'Twould be a rare treat for the lads.
Molly Grew grumbled some savage generalizations about wizards as a class, but the men shouted with quick delight, throwing one another into the air. The only real reluctance was shown by Captain Cully himself, who protested sadly. Yes, but the songs! Mr. Child must hear the songs! And so I will, Schmendrick assured him. Later. Cully brightened then and cried to his men to give way and make room. They sprawled and squatted in the shadows, watching with sprung grins as Schmendrick began to run through the old flummeries with which he had entertained the country folk at the midnight carnival. It was poultry magic, but he thought it diverting enough for such a crew as Cully's. But he had judged them too easily. They applauded his rings and scarves, his ears full of goldfish and aces, with a proper politeness but without wonder. Offering no true magic, he drew no magic back from them. And when a spell failed, as when promising to turn a duck into a duke for them to rob, he produced a handful of duke cherries, he was clapped just as kindly and vacantly as though he had succeeded. They were a perfect audience. Cully smiled impatiently, and Jack Jingley dozed, but it startled the magician to see the disappointment in Molly Grew's restless eyes. Sudden anger made him laugh. He dropped 7 spinning balls that had been growing brighter and brighter as he juggled them. On a good evening, he could make them catch fire. Let go all his hated skills and closed his eyes. Do as you will, he whispered to the magic. Do as you will. It sighed through him, beginning somewhere secret, in his shoulder blade perhaps, or in the marrow of his shin bone. His heart filled and tautened like a sail, and something moved more surely in his body than he ever had. It spoke with his voice, commanding. Weak with power, he sank to his knees and waited to be Schmendrick again. I wonder what I did. I did something. He opened his eyes. Most of the outlaws were chuckling and tapping their temples, glad of the chance to mock him. Captain Cully had risen, anxious to pronounce that part of the entertainment ended. Then Molly Grew cried out in a soft, shaking voice, and all turned to see what she saw. A man came walking into the clearing. He was dressed in green, before a brown jerkin, and a slanting brown cap with a woodcock's feather in it. He was very tall, too tall for a living man. The great bow slung over his shoulder looked as long as Jack Jingley, and his arrows would have made spears or staves for Captain Cully. Taking no notice at all of the still, shabby forms by the fire, he strode through the light and vanished, with no sound of breath or footfall. After him came others, one at a time or two together, some conversing, many laughing, but none making any sound. All carried longbows, and all wore green, save one who came clad in scarlet to his toes, and another gowned in a friar's brown habit, his feet in sandals, and his enormous belly contained by a rope belt. One played a lute and sang silently as he walked. Alan a Dale! It was raw Willie Gentle. Look at those changes! His voice was as naked as a baby bird. Effortlessly proud, graceful as giraffes, even the tallest among them, a kind-eyed blunderbore. The bowmen moved across the clearing. Last, hand in hand, came a man and a woman. Their faces were as beautiful as though they had never known fear. The woman's heavy hair shone like a secret, like a cloud that hides the moon. Oh, said Molly Grew. Marion! Robin Hood is a myth, Captain Cully said nervously. A classic example of the heroic folk figure synthesized out of need. John Henry is another. Men need to have heroes, but no man can ever be as big as the need, and so a legend grows around a grain of truth like a pearl. Not that it isn't a remarkable trick, of course. It was the seedy dandy Dick Fancy who moved first. All the figures but the last two had passed into the darkness when he rushed after them, calling hoarsely, Robin! Robin! Mr. Hood, sir! Wait for me! Neither the man nor the woman turned, but every man of Cully's band, saving only Jack Jingley and the captain himself, ran to the clearing's edge, tripping and trampling one another, kicking the fire so that the clearing churned with shadows. Robin! They shouted, and Marion, Scarlet, Little John! Come back! Come back! Schmendrick began to laugh, tenderly and helplessly. Over their voices, Captain Cully screamed, Fools! Fools and children! It was a lie, like all magic! There is no such person as Robin Hood! But the outlaws, wild with loss, went crashing into the woods after the shining archers, stumbling over logs, falling through thorn bushes, wailing hungrily as they ran. Only Molly Grew stopped and looked back. Her face was burning white. Nay, Cully, you have it backward, she called to him. There's no such a person as you or me. Robin and Marion are real, and we are the legend. Then she ran on, crying, Wait, wait, like the others, leaving Captain Cully and Jack Jingley to stand in the tramped firelight and listen to the magician's laughter. Schmendrick hardly noticed when they sprang on him and seized his arms, nor did they flinch when Cully pricked his ribs with a dagger, hissing, That was a dangerous diversion, Mr. Child, and rude as well. You could have said you didn't want to hear the songs. The dagger twitched deeper. Far away, he heard Jack Jingley growl, He's not Child, Cully, nor is he any journeyman wizard either. I know him now. He's Haggard's son, the Prince Lear, as foul as his father, and doubtless handy with the black arts. Hold your hand, Captain. He's no good to us dead. Captain Cully's voice drooped. Are you sure, Jack? He seemed such a pleasant fellow. Pleasant fool, you mean? Aye, Lear has that air. I've heard tell. He plays the gormless innocent, but he's the devil for deception. Why he gave out to be this child cove just to get you off your guard. I want off my guard, Jack, Cully protested. Not for a moment. I may have seemed to be, but I'm very deceptive myself. And the way he called up Robin Hood to fill the lads with longing and turn them against you. Ah, but he gave himself away that time, and now he'll bide with us though his father sent the Red Bull to free him. Cully caught his breath at that, but the giant bore him to a great tree, where he bound him with his face to the trunk, and his arms stretched around it. Schmendrick giggled gently all through the operation, and made matters easier by hugging the tree as fondly as a new bride. Ah, Jack Jingley said at last. Do you guard him tonight, Cully, whilst I sleep? In the morning it's me to all Haggard to see what this boy's worth to him. Happen we'll all be gentlemen of leisure in a month's time. What of the men? Cully asked worriedly. Will they come back, do you think? The giant yawned and turned away. I'll be back by morning. Sad and sneezing. And you'll have to be easy with them for a bit. I'll be back. For I'm not the sort to trade something for nothing. No more am I. Robin Hood might have stayed for us if we were. Good night to you, Captain. There was no sound when he was gone, but crickets, and Schmendrick's soft chuckling to the tree. The fire faded, and Cully turned in circles, sighing as each ember went out. Finally, he sat down on a stump and addressed the captive magician. Haggard's son you may be, he mused, and not the collector child as you claim. But whoever you are, you know very well that Robin Hood is the fable and I am the reality.
No ballads will accumulate around my name unless I write them myself. No children will read of my adventures in their school books and play at being me after school. And when the professors prowl through the old tales, and scholars sift the old songs to learn if Robin Hood ever truly lived, they will never, never find my name, not till they crack the world for the grain of its heart. But you know, and therefore I am going to sing you the songs of Captain Cully. He was a good, gay rascal who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. In their gratitude, the people made up these simple verses about him. Whereupon he sang them all, including the one that Willie Gentle had sung for Schmendrick. He paused often to comment on the varying rhythm patterns, the assonantal rhymes, and the modal melodies. And that brings us to the end of chapter 5. 3 chapters today. I'm thinking I may try to do 3 chapters a day since there's, well, there were 12 chapters left when I started today. Now there's 9. So, um, thank you so much for tuning in again. Always really happy to read for you guys. um, I'm pretty sure that tomorrow will be the next one I do. Um, Probably around the same time. I'm pretty sure that 8 p.m. PST is a pretty solid time for me, even when I'm busy with other stuff. um, well, I guess I can be candid. I mean, even if I have work, you know, then I can still probably read to you guys around this time every night. So, thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed today's chapters. Oh boy, it seemed like a lot happened today, huh? Actually, it really did happen. A lot really did happen. Goodness. Um, so yeah, we concluded the Midnight Carnival arc, and now we are pretty firmly in the, I guess we'll call this Captain Cully arc. And I guess we're gonna move into the next arc in the next few batches, probably. So yeah, thank you again for stopping by. I don't really have anything else to announce at the moment. Well, I think sometime this week I will finish finalizing all the stuff for like my proper uh, channel for my tuber persona and all that. So I'm glad to be testing out the streams with you guys and testing background music and all that stuff. But hopefully by this week I'll be able to finalize everything. I mean, it shouldn't take me that long if I really like set down to it, but I'm giving myself the wiggle room. So, yeah, I think that about does it for us today. Yeah, nearing the hour and a half mark. So, thank you so much for being here and being a wonderful audience. Um, I don't know, every time I see a new character, I'm always like on the spot making a new voice. So I'm always like, oh gosh, I hope they like this voice that I'm picking for the character. And I hope that they don't sound too similar to a character I had already done. But like, I am one person. I only have like 10 voices at most. So I just hope that it interchanges like far and away enough that you don't confuse them for someone else or something. But yeah, um,
to do some accents and stuff like I do with Jack, and also some effects like giving him that like really growly, low effort kind of not enunciating his words type of thing. So I think if I run out of like vocal ranges, you might hear more accents as we go in the story. I don't know. I'm stalling. I don't want to leave. I like my unicorn voice. I think my unicorn voice is actually really good. I don't normally like hit that high, especially for a talking voice, but somehow I guess just thinking of a unicorn just kind of helps my voice jolt higher. I don't know. Only I have to eventually. But yeah, um, Schmendrick being a recurring, like a Schmendrick being along for the long haul makes me really glad that I sort of defaulted to my like normal masculine voice because if I had to do an effect for him the whole time, I might just like recast him or something. I don't know. Like, I'm so glad I know nothing about this story, so I don't know what character is gonna be like long lasting and like who's gonna stay throughout the various arcs. So I'm so glad that Schmendrick is like the one that I went, you know what? I'm just gonna talk like this. Or sometimes like this. Like give him a bit of like a soft spoken effect because he really saves my voice when it comes time to like I I I might do a yap at some point about like the breakdown of my vocal effects because like I could kind of do it now a little bit, but like with Captain Cully, it's hard to explain without like demonstrating it. But then you see a lot of weird close-ups of my mouth and stuff. But like with Captain Cully, what I end up doing is I really move my lips like as dramatically as possible. Like it's like basically how do I put it? It's like when you turn up the sensitivity of the mouse and like the cursor just like shoots when you like barely nudge it. So like you know how when you talk normally your lips just kind of move in like a certain way, but with Captain Cully what I end up doing is I like ramp up how far the lips move. So for example, it's like it's unnatural how much I'm opening my mouth to speak like him, but it gives the effect of like this really pompous guy who's trying to sound more important, I think. Um, and then for Jack, what I end up doing is I sort of not only use this bit of an accent, but I also speak a little more from like a little more from the throat, which is not exactly healthy, but it gives that feeling of this like big man with a really deep voice. It's something like that, you know what I mean? Like it's very I kind of like like I said, it's really hard without like getting without like turning on the camera and getting really close and like showing you weird close-ups of my. But like it's like I kind of okay, I can explain it. It's like what I do is I focus on moving my lower jaw more, so it's like I'm pulling up with my lower jaw, and my throat just kind of tightens as it moves with it. It's a whole thing. Um, The problem with that is I can already tell I'm kind of reusing a voice because that's the same voice I used for Rook. So I guess that's just the type I'm using for for that type of like character, where I'm using like this um but yeah, it's basically like just sort of using my lower jaw to pull up on my vocal cords to like tighten it up, um, as well as well as not enunciating my words as much. So it's like, you know, yeah, it's hard to explain, but that's the sort of process I do. And then I don't know, I just since they said somebody with like age for Dick Fancy, which really, anyway, um, I sort of wanted somebody with a little bit of grit to their voice. And what made me think of that, what I thought of when I thought of something like that, someone who's seasoned, maybe a little jaded, was, and I'm sure you can tell if you've heard it before, if you've listened to the voice, is it's kind of a little Eurylochus from Epic the Musical, kind of. That's the kind of feel I was going with that guy. um, Um, sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts. And then for Molly, what I wanted to do was not so much the same voice as the unicorn, but maybe someone like kind of like a more, I guess, sort of a jaded version of the unicorn, like a woman who sort of bought into this story that Captain Cully was trying to make, and like kind of what happens when the story doesn't play out like that. This sort of like there's still the trace of the woman in there who left on this big journey, but it didn't really turn out the way she had hoped. And, you know, it hadn't really become what her life hasn't really gone right since then. I mean, she's living in the woods making like leaf soup. Like, you know, so it's that kind of thing. Um, I wanted to sort of, and then for the mayor, what I did is I kind of inflated my diaphragm a bit, so I'm speaking more from the stomach, you know, to help kind of sell that style, especially with the way they describe him as a very well off man, very you know, kind of doesn't know what a lean season looks like, So, very, very jolly kind of sound. Um, the kind that you could kind of imagine a belly laugh coming from. So that's the sort of the voice I had the hardest time with was actually the old witch of Mommy Fortuna. I I do not know how to do like an old witchy kind of voice yet, and you can tell, I didn't want to go stereotypical cackly kind of, or like the stereotypical. old woman kind of voice. You know, but without those options, I don't really know to what to have really done. So I was kind of at a loss for her. But um, I think that was probably my weakest suit, which is okay. Yeah, I didn't want to like go straight to Enya from Stardust Crusaders. I didn't want to go like straight into old hag territory because like that's just so. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just such a cliche voice type. It's such a stereotypical voice that even if there are people that sound like it, it's just been done so many times. I kind of wanted to like do something else. So like it's still a woman who sounds wicked, but doesn't sound like this. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh. Um, sorry. That's my little that's my little guy. Oh no, the immersion. The immersion. I'm not a single wolf girl in a library. Oh no. Or a study. I forget what I got for this image. But alright, I guess I tell me the boy needs a model. He doesn't deserve one. Well, that's not true. He's my special little guy, but maybe when I get my like 5.0. I was kidding. Someday we'll get a whole we'll get someday I'll get a whole thing and I'll get a mocap suit for him too, so you can see him being a little guy in real time. Ah, but oh shit, I've yapped on for about 15 extra minutes. I think that's good padding. I should probably get going now. So I'll be back tomorrow to read to the rest of you guys, or you know, to read the rest of this arc, to read more to you. But I have to go until then. I've got a couple of other stuff to do. So, you know, um, proper debut on my actual tuber channel sometime this week, hopefully. I may wait till after the end of Last Unicorn in order to do that. Um, so yeah, I'll probably I'll probably do that. I'll wait to finish the story up first, and then I'll debut, and uh, yeah. Oh gosh, I don't. Oh god, I don't even know what I'm doing. I mean, I gotta set up my like socials and hype the debut and stuff like that. Oh gosh. And the funny thing is, I'm still gonna be using this model on this channel too. Like, if I do make stuff on this channel, I'm still gonna be doing this here, which is hilarious because my face is already in the profile picture, so like whatever. But I don't know. I mean, why not, right? It's fun. Maybe sometimes I'll like do a silly little thing where I like have have my face in the same shot or something. I don't know. Like, could you imagine how funny it'd be if I'm just talking like this and then suddenly jump scare? So it's just this is still my channel for me as myself. So you know, this is still for me to do whatever I want with, and my face is already on here. So what am I gonna do? Not show my face? Like, you know. But sometimes I just want to be a silly wolf girl, and so I will be. But the other account is going to be strictly for this, and I'll try to like tune it up and be a little bit more professional over time. I'll make that as like my proper channel to like audition with someday when it comes time to do that. I gotta remember that, you know, the big play button, the big blue play button, the big blue Japanese play button is not the only name in the game. So when the time comes, I should probably expect to absolutely not get in with them. But I'll still audition for them, and then see who else. But I'm thinking way too far ahead. Oh my god, I haven't even debuted on the other channel yet. Slow down, you weirdo. But I think that's my sign that I should call it when I start talking about random subjects like that. So let's let's go ahead and say goodbye for now, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming by. Thank you for listening. And remember to eat well, stay hydrated, get some good rest, and as always, make sure to check your posture and unshrimp yourself. Love you guys so much, my Rainiacs. Take good care. I will see you all next time. Until then, this is Ray, signing out. Have a radiant rest of your night. Bye!